Om Bhadram Karnebhih Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraah Sishtirangai Stushtuvam Sastanyubhih Vyasema Devahidam Yadayuh Sustina Indro Vruddhasavaah Sustina Pusha Vishyavedaah Sustina Starkshu Arishtanemihi Sustino Brihasphadir Dadhadu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Almighty God, let us be capable of performing sacrifices and hear auspicious sounds with our ears and see only auspicious forms with our eyes, with strong and steady limbs and body, and remaining ever prayerful. Let us spend our God-given life directing our minds and energy only to auspicious things. Om peace, peace, peace. Now we are going to deal with the 30th verse of the second chapter of the Gaudapada Karika, Vaidatya Prakaranam, that is second chapter, 30th verse. We have been discussing 35 types of superimpositions. From 20th verse to 28th verse, Gaudapada gave a long exposition of different types of superimpositions. We are actually the supreme consciousness, the Atman, the immanent, all-pervading, omnipresent, transcendental reality. But we are not aware of this. So instead of being aware of this, we think ourselves to be many things other than Atman, other than the Supreme Consciousness. We think we are this body, we think we are the senses, we are the vital energy, and different things other than Atman. It's just like, as I said, you have to think of the old analogy. The rope is lying there right in front of you in a dim lit room. 100 people think that this rope is 100 different things which are different from the rope. The only thing that they are not aware of is the fact that it is a piece of rope. They think it is something else. Similarly, we are always in a state of unawareness. We are not aware of the fact that we are the Supreme Consciousness, the immanent divine reality within. Instead of that, we think we are this body. And then we are deluded by many associations. Well, I belong to this place, I am born in this place, I am just a child, or father, or mother, or brother, or sister of so many, of a specific person. It is all right, but then behind this body-mind complex, behind this psychophysical mechanism, is the eternal reality that we are this Atman, the Supreme Consciousness. When we are not aware of this fact, we think we are this body, we are this mind. When we think we are this body, whatever happens to the body becomes so important that we are deluded by this. And when we think we are this mind, when the smallest problem arises, we become terribly unhappy and sometimes very happy also. So we identify ourselves with this mind, intellect, and so on. Behind this body, behind this mind, behind this intellect, there is a supreme reality, consciousness. Now, before going further, I shall illustrate this point in the light of a famous analogy. It is found in another Upanishad, another ancient philosophical work, which is also about 4,000, 5,000 years old, Taittiriya Upanishad, one of the important metaphysical works. There is an interesting dialogue. A small child goes to his father. Now, and this child must have heard about some fundamental metaphysical ideas, but he doesn't know what it is. Anyhow, he casually puts a question to his father. The question is, please teach me the ultimate reality. Please teach me about the ultimate reality. Please teach me about the nature of God, put in the language of monotheistic religions. Adhihi bhagavo brahmeti. This is the question. The child's name is Bhrigu and his father's name is Varuna. So that is how the episode begins. Then the father asks him, well, you look around and what do you see around you? You see the mountains, the valleys, the San Francisco Bay, the bridge, the vehicles, and so many things, the sky, clouds, and so on. Just imagine, just think, where do they come from? What is the origin? What is the fundamental cause? The point of origination of all these different things, phenomenal, empirical things that you see around you, that you hear about, that you feel the presence of. What are these things? And where do they come from? Where do they exist? From where do they come? And how and who sustains them in a state of existence? What is the state of existence? The state of existence is the state between the point of origination and the point of dissolution, disappearance. This is what we call a state of existence. So, from where do they originate? Who sustains them? And ultimately, what will happen to them? So, the father gives a list of things. Annam, pranam, chakshusrotram, mano, vachamiti. This means, the list is this: matter, mind, energy, intellect, thoughts, thought vibrations. These are the things that you normally experience. When you look, when you open your eyes, when you see things with the mind and eyes, you see different things. Or when with your ears and mind, you hear things. With your sense of touch and mind, you come to know of the presence of things through touch. And when you feel with your mind, you feel hunger, thirst, and so on with your vital energy, and so on. Now, where do they come from? Who sustains them? What happens to them? What is the point of dissolution? Where are they heading for? Now, this boy, and then after making this statement, the father makes a concluding statement. The statement is, try to understand this through meditation, through introspection. That means you think, where do they come from, who sustains them, and what happens to them in the end. Tapasa Brahma Vijijñāsasva. It means Sanskrit term. The idea is this: by introspection, by meditation, by inward contemplation, try to understand the point of origination, the principle that sustains this world, and also their ultimate destiny. Now, this is what actually scientists also does. A scientist also is meditating. See, meditation in Vedantic language is not just closing your eyes and sitting in a forest. Meditation has got a higher and more scientific and rational meaning. When you divert all the five senses of your perception, mind and intellect. And when you focus them on one point, that is called meditation. In fact, that is the definition of meditation. When your mind, intellect, and the five senses of perception are focused on one point, this is called meditation. Now, when you focus your mind and the five senses of perception on one point, external nature will be forced to reveal its secrets. That's what happened to Einstein, Newton, all the great scientists in the world. They were knocking at the doors of nature, but with tremendous concentration. See, if you are a real scientist, at least before the present age, scientists had to depend so much upon their intense, internal, intuitive meditation before the discovery of modern gadgets. Because they had to depend so much upon their inner concentration. So it is said, Newton used to invite people to his home. When they come, he will forget them and he will be busy doing his studies. And after several hours, they will ask, well, we are waiting for lunch. But he would have completely forgotten all about it. But today you may not do that because you have got machines, gadgets in front of you. But the great scientists of ancient times were knocking at the doors of external nature with a tremendous intensity. So nature was forced to reveal its secrets. Maybe theory of gravitation or theory of relativity, whatever may be. Now, in this episode, the father asked the child, you meditate. But not on the external nature, but on the internal nature. Means, a scientist is, of course, he is meditating, but his focus is external nature. And the spiritual seeker is meditating, his focus is the internal nature. So this boy meditated for a long time, and then he thought, well, everywhere I see all these external phenomena, there cannot be anything more than what I could see with my eyes or with my ears. So he said, all these, the matter is the fundamental principle, the final cause of the world, and the sustaining principle and ultimate destiny of the world is matter. That was the first discovery. In fact, that's what happens in the evolution of human inquiry in any field. Beginning is matter. And then the father said, no, you are wrong. You continue your meditation. After several months of meditation, the boy finally thought vital energy is the higher principle. That is the point of origination of the universe, sustaining principle of the universe, and the ultimate destiny. Vital energy. Because it is much more subtle than matter. Then also father corrected him, no, you should continue your meditation, your introspection. And at the third stage, the boy discovered, rather he thought he had reached his goal. He thought mind is the origin of the universe. Because things exist only so long as they exist in our mind. In fact, that is, more roughly speaking, that is the view of subjective idealists, Berkeley and others. And also the ancient Buddhist idealists, they were called the Vivekananda school of Buddhism, one of the two schools of idealism. There are two schools of idealism in the later Buddhism. One is the doctrine of emptiness, that is Shunyavada, and the doctrine of subjective idealism, that is Vijnanavada. Now, father said, you are wrong. Because mind fluctuates every moment. See, mind is something that goes on changing. Mind undergoes all kinds of emotions and impulses. How can that mind be the eternal principle from which the world originates? Father said, you are wrong, you continue your meditation. At the fourth stage, this boy thought, well, I have reached my goal, intellect. Because intellect goes beyond mind. Intellect is more subtle than mind. Because you understand things through intellect. Then also the father corrected him. You should not stop here. You have not reached a goal. And at the fifth stage, the boy reached his goal. And then when he came, he was silent. So when you reach your goal, you reach a stage of inner bliss. Because then you don't need anyone to tell you that you have reached the goal. At the spiritual level, of course. When you're traveling by train or plane, somebody need to tell you that you have reached your goal. But in inward spiritual journey, when you reach the level of inner intuitive experience, that experience itself is so self-revealing, and you feel a kind of inner bliss, which goes much beyond, far beyond what we call satisfaction or contentment. And this inner bliss is, in fact, the experience that we are one with the creation. Within us there is the immanent reality, and the same reality is the omnipresent, all-pervading reality, and the same reality is the ultimate transcendental reality. When you reach this experience, no books can tell you what you have experienced, because experience, that intuitive inner experience, goes beyond books, beyond words, beyond explanations, definitions, and descriptions. Now, when this experience was reached, the boy was in a state of bliss. This is how that particular episode concludes in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Now, so long as we are in a state of ignorance of our true nature, we mistake ourselves to be many things other than what we really are. But when we really experience what we really are, then no words can explain that inner experience. Because this experience is not a knowledge that comes from outside. It is, in fact, only the removal of wrong notions that we have with regard to what we are. You don't get a new knowledge. It is not objectified knowledge. When you go to a place, when you come to know what is lying in front of you, a box or a book, that book becomes the object and you are the subject. So the knowledge of the book is the process of knowing, and the book is object of knowledge. So it is objectified. But when we really understand what we actually are, it is self-discovery. It is not discovery, it is self-discovery. In modern science, we discover things, but in spiritual experience, we self-discover ourselves. We understand our true nature. That is the subject that we are going to deal with in the 30th verse. 30th means, Etaihi eshaka aprathak bhavehi prathak evedi rekshitaha evam yo veda tattvena kalpayet so avishankitaha. This is the verse. I shall just split the verse in prose order, then I will explain. Eshaka, this Atman, etaihi aprathak bhavaihi prathak eva iti lekshitaha yaha evam tattvena veda saha avishankitaha kalpayet. This is the verse here. The idea is this. We have to go back to the old analogy. For those of you who may be new, I shall just give a brief explanation of this analogy, which I have explained several times earlier. You have to think of a room which is just dimly. There is not enough light. There is something, an object lying in front of you, a piece of rope, but there is not enough light. So people think this rope is rope is a snake, maybe a piece of curved stick, or a thin stream, a crack on the floor, or many things else. People may mistake this rope to be many things other than this rope. Now, when you bring light, you immediately realize it is not a snake or a stick, it is a piece of rope. Now, who reveals the fact that it is a piece of rope? Well, the light doesn't reveal that it is a piece of rope. You'll be surprised to know. Because even if you don't bring light, the rope will be a rope. But what happens when you bring light? This light removes the darkness, which caused all the misunderstanding. So the light removes darkness, and when darkness is removed, all misunderstandings vanish, and when all the misunderstandings or ignorance vanish, then the right understanding comes. Right understanding is not the result of light. But what is the result of light? Removal of darkness is the result of light. The light doesn't reveal the rope. The light only removes darkness. Then what reveals the rope? The rope reveals itself. Why? Because even if you don't bring light, the rope will be there. Only darkness also will be there. And darkness will create misunderstanding. Similarly, even when we don't realize that we are the Supreme Consciousness, still we are Supreme Consciousness. The fact that we are Atman, that we are Supreme Consciousness, is not the result of our knowing, our realization that we are Atman. It doesn't depend upon our realization. Even if you think you are this body, you will not be this body, you are this consciousness. So, this knowledge is not a result of any process. Because a knowledge which comes to you, which is caused by some external factor, cannot be absolutely real. Because anything which is caused cannot be real. Anything which is an effect of a cause cannot be real. So what is the reality? The reality is uncaused cause. The reality never becomes the effect. And therefore, it never a cause, it is uncaused cause, it is the permanent reality. That's why it is said, when we realize that we are this Atman, we are only discovering what we actually are. We are not getting any new knowledge. Because a knowledge that comes to us cannot be permanent. It will vanish. Whatever comes will vanish. Whatever comes into existence in time will vanish in time. Anything which is confined to time, space and causation is relative. What is relativity? Relativity is the one word you use. It consists of time, space and causation. It is not absolutely non-existent, but it is not absolute reality either. It is only relative reality. Now, in this verse, what the author says is this. Even though this Atman is not different from all these things, still people think it is different. Well, I shall explain this. Again, you have to think of the analogy of rope and snake. Somebody seeing the rope in a dim lit semi-dark room thinks that this rope is a snake. When the light is brought, he immediately realizes it is after all a piece of rope. Now, another person thinks this rope is a stick, a curved stick. Another person thinks it is a thin stream of light or a crack on the floor, and so on. Now, what the person thinks to be the snake is in fact not different from the rope. Because if the if the rope did not exist there, you will not see the snake. And a person who mistakes this rope to be a crack on the floor is correct in a way. But as crack on the floor, it is wrong, he is wrong. As the rope, he is right. Without the existence of the rope, you will not feel there is a crack on the floor. It means as a rope, it is correct. His vision is correct. But when he mistakes the rope to be the crack on the floor, he is wrong. So the crack on the floor is not different from the rope. He mistakes the rope to be a crack on the floor. He mistakes the rope to be a snake, and he goes about to bring a stick and beats that rope. And then he realizes, well, what I mistook to be a cobra is in fact a piece of rope only. So is that cobra different from the rope? No. What the object as cobra is non-existent, the object as rope is existent. So that's the point. So whatever we think, this body, etc., in fact it's true, but as body it is not real, because this body cannot function without the presence of Atman within. No. A dead man never walks. His body, his hands and legs should be maybe very strong, but he never walks. Something leaves him. The Atman, the consciousness, departs from his body, and he cannot walk. So, what enabled him to walk? The presence of consciousness. But the consciousness itself doesn't walk. When the consciousness expresses itself through his feet starts walking. When the consciousness expresses itself through his eyes, he is able to see things. So that is the technical point, remember. The entire creation is Brahman itself, but not in association with name and form. If you look at this world, well, if you are seeing this pluralistic world with different things, mountains, valleys, etc., well, that is a wrong understanding. But when you look at this world as the outer expression of a subtle supreme consciousness, then you are right. That's why Vedantins say, that is a very interesting principle. From philosophical point of view, this world is only relative. Brahman is only reality. From experience point of view, everything is Brahman. Sarvam khalu idam Brahma. That is Upanishad statement. That's why many of you must have seen Ramana Maharshi sitting somewhere and staring at something. You look at his eyes. When Ramana Maharshi was in a state of samadhi, he may be staring at you. He may be staring at people around. He may be staring at people preparing food for the guests. But so far as he is concerned, he sees the whole play of this world as the supreme consciousness, as the divine reality itself. That is at the experience level. Now, very often great spiritual personalities come down to a lower level, at the philosophical level. Then, well, the world expressing itself through name and form is only relative, but the Brahman is only reality. Does it mean that the relative has got an existence independent of the absolute? No. Because there is only one absolute reality. That is Brahman. The so-called relative is in fact nothing but seeing the absolute through the eyes of relativity. When you look at the absolute reality through the prism of time, space and causation, you see this world. When you look at this world without associating the name and form, from the absolute point of view, you are seeing Brahman, supreme consciousness everywhere. I shall illustrate this point in the light of an interesting incident in the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He was the guru of Swami Vivekananda, who brought Vedanta and Yoga all to America in 1893. Now, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was Swami Vivekananda's guru, who trained him, who taught him the highest Vedantic ideas and also experience. Now, one day, an odd-looking man came to the temple where Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was sitting. He was meditating, he did his spiritual practices there for years, for decades. This man was externally very odd-looking. But Sri Ramakrishna found that his eyes and expressions were superhuman. He felt this man doesn't belong to this world. He belongs to another realm of spiritual experience. And what did he do, He went to the Ganga, took a dip, and did not remove water, straight away came, and then there were leftover items of food eaten by other people, leaves, After eating food, people used to throw their leaf. They used to eat food on leaves, mostly this banana leaves, huge, big leaves. They used to serve food for guests in the temple, and thousands will be fed. So, there was one place where all these leftover food items were thrown. And this odd-looking man went straight there, and there were dogs and cats who were having a good feast. After all people have finished their food, they had thrown things there, and these dogs and cats were eating. This man straight away went there, and he started eating all this. When a human being goes there, normally cats and dogs will be frightened, or they will attack him. But they felt very much at home in his company. Because this man felt himself to be non-different from the entire creation. So they felt happy with him. Okay. And after some time, he went away. He walked. Then Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa told his nephew, who was looking after him, this man is not an ordinary man. He has reached the highest state of that intuitive experience. When you reach the experience level, when you feel yourself non-different and distinct from the entire creation, you get a different look. You belong to a different realm. You belong to a different level of spiritual experience. So Sri Ramakrishna himself had undergone that experience. So he understood who this man was. And he asked his nephew, Hridaya, to follow him. Hridaya followed him, but the man was slightly odd. He tried to dissuade this gentleman, Hridaya, chasing him. Tried to throw stones to test him, but Hridaya persisted. Then Hridaya asked for an advice. This man stood there, looked back. Then Hridaya asked for some spiritual instruction from this odd-looking man. Immediately his whole expression changed. He was trying to test Hridaya whether he was fit for this instruction or not. But Hridaya persisted. Then he said, when you stop seeing any distinction between the holy water of Ganga or Ganges river and the water in the ditch, in the ditch water, when you feel that the holy water of Ganga and the ditch water are the same, when you go beyond all sense of distinctions and differences, when you feel yourself established in a state of perfect equanimity of vision and understanding, that is the sign of true wisdom. That is true wisdom, jnanam. That's the instruction given by this teacher. Now, that is a state of highest experience. Now, for such men of spiritual experience, the entire world is is an expression of supreme consciousness, supreme bliss, supreme existence. That's what he said. From the experience point of view, everything that you experience is the same as supreme consciousness. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. That's the expression in the Upanishads. Everything is Brahman itself. But from the philosophical point of view, and philosophy is far behind experience, remember. Philosophy can never reach the level of experience. In fact, philosophy helps you to learn that experience is beyond philosophy. In fact, that is the role of philosophy. All true philosophical systems, all great philosophical systems, all genuine philosophers have taught that spiritual experience is beyond philosophy. If anybody tells you that spiritual experience is condensed in this book, then that person is neither a philosopher nor a man of spiritual wisdom. Because all great philosophers take you to this penultimate goal and then tell you, well, the supreme destination is beyond philosophy. That's all. So here, Gaudapada says, even though this Atman or supreme consciousness is not separate from all these different entities, still Atman or consciousness is imagined as if it were separate. One who really knows this to be the real nature of things can interpret spirituality or the Vedas without any hesitation. This is the idea behind. Now we will come to the next verse, 31st verse. That is a famous, this is one of the most celebrated, famous verses in this text. Swapnamaye yatha drishte gandharva nagaram yatha tatha vishwamidam drishtam vedanteshu vijakshanaihi. The prose order is this. Yatha swapnamaye drishte yatha gandharva nagaram drishtam tatha vedanteshu vijakshanaihi idam drishtam. Now, what you see in dream or the imagination of a child who may imagine that there are different things on the sky are all wrong. Similarly, people who believe this world as we see this pluralistic world, the world of name and form, this changing empirical phenomena. If people think this changing empirical phenomena are real, all these people are equally mistaken. Just as dreams and illusions or a city in the air is seen as real, similarly, the universe is also seen by the wise people. The wise men understand this world of name and form, this changing empirical phenomena, are as unreal as dream or the imagination of a child. I shall give the explanation. Of course, we have given long descriptions of the phenomenon of dream. When you come out of dream, and when you look at dream from the standpoint of waking experience, you realize that they were all dream experiences. Because you have just had a full meal, you go to sleep, you dream you are hungry. Or when you are very hungry, you may go to sleep and you dream you have had a heavy meal. So that means dream experience is different from waking experience. So ordinary people, from the waking state experience point of view, will conclude that dreams are all illusions. Similarly, children is an example. Remember, these examples were given, first it was used, these examples were used by Nagarjuna, who was the greatest philosopher of Mahayana Buddhism, who wrote his famous book, which is Madhyamika Karika. Nagarjuna uses this expression. He was a famous person. Nagarjuna also uses Yatha Maya Yatha Swapne Gandharva Nagaram Tatha Tathotpadas Tatha Sthanam Tatha Ida Udahridaka. Now I'm just giving an example. The example is this: small children looking at the sky in the evening when the sun is about to set, when the sky is full of golden light of the setting sun, may imagine there is a big city in the sky. Small children, kids, in their imagination. Now, and they think that there is a big city in the sky, there are shops, there are shopkeepers and so on. Sometimes, parents also, maybe not these days, but in ancient times, parents also used to tell these children about such imaginary stories. See, there is a big kingdom, there is a big city in the sky, there are shops, just like we have shops here. So also there is human habitation in the sky. Children used to be told such stories by parents or grandparents in ancient times. That's the example given here. But it's all illusion only, just as the illusions of dream. Similarly, a wise man means a wise woman or wise man who has got the highest spiritual wisdom, who has reached the highest spiritual consciousness, sees this world just as an illusion. Now, there is a gradual evolution from the most primitive to the most advanced level. The most primitive person thinks this world is the only reality. That's the normal understanding for a primitive person. You tell him about things, you talk to him about after death experiences, talk to him about heaven. He won't be interested. Not very different from animals. Animals have only programmed intelligence. It's called instinct. They cannot think and contemplate. So also many human beings belonging to the same level of consciousness may think whatever we see around is the only reality. So the whole purpose of human life is to lead a happy life in this world. For them, world is only reality. Atman, God, or heaven, or any other supernatural beings are absolutely unreal. Then there are people who are more advanced, the great scientists, thinkers, and also many thinking ordinary people who are spiritually more evolved. You tell them, this world you are living is the only reality. There is nothing beyond that. They would agree with you. They may not be philosophers. They may not have spiritual experiences. But they would tell you, well, you are absolutely wrong. There is something beyond all this. At least they will tell you there is something that we cannot see, we cannot define, we cannot explain. They would say there is an energy, all-pervading energy in this world. They won't agree with you if you tell them, well, the whole purpose of human life is to enjoy this world. Because this visible, empirical world is the only reality. They won't agree with you. You need not be a philosopher to disagree with this primitive view. For such people, this world is indescribable, beyond definition. Or it is unknown or unknowable. They would tell you that this world that we see is not the only reality. Then what is the only reality? They would say, we don't know. It is beyond knowledge. They may, well, there is an energy, there is a power, there is something beyond the empirical. They would tell you. But it is something that we cannot explain. We cannot describe. For such people, this world is indescribable. Or the reality is unknowable. The second stage of human evolution. At the third stage, the great philosophers. At the philosophical level, they come to a definite conclusion that this world is and it can never be a permanent reality. Any scientists would tell you this world cannot be a permanent reality. When you use the word permanent reality, when you use that phrase, it means it should remain the same. It should remain the same in all the three states of waking, dream, and deep sleep experiences. It cannot be. And it should be the same in the past, present, and future. Well, the earth itself cannot be an eternal reality, because the earth did not exist before Big Bang and may not exist after the great crunch, or maybe after several millions of years. This earth will not exist the way it is existing right now in front of you. So anything which goes on changing cannot be eternal. It will change its shape. It will change its shape, its size, its color, its dimensions. So anything which changes its shape and form, and name and form, cannot be eternal. That is the view of philosophers. And then there are those who have gone beyond philosophy, who have reached the level of experience. They would tell you, well, this world is only a relative entity. Mithya means a relative entity. There is the Supreme Consciousness, which is the only reality. And then, at the end of this intuitive experience, at the ultimate state, they will tell you, consciousness, Atman, is the only ultimate reality, and this world in its true nature is non-different and non-distinct from that consciousness. Because there can be only one absolute reality, and that is the Supreme Consciousness. Just as the snake cannot be real as the rope, so also the Supreme Consciousness is the only reality. Snake is only a superimposition on the rope. Similarly, this name and form are only superimpositions on the absolute reality. From the absolute point of view, the reality is one. This world, as we see, doesn't have an independent existence. This is the conclusion. Now, that idea is brought out here in the 31st verse. Swapnamaye yatha drishte gandharva nagaram yatha. Gandharva nagaram means the city in the sky, where children sometimes may believe the sky in the evening, which looks very brilliant, glittering. When the sun is about to set, the golden light of the setting sun is spread everywhere. They will think this sky is a supernatural existence. There are divine beings around. It's all absolute illusions. Similarly, a person who has reached the highest intuitive spiritual experience will see everything other than the Supreme Consciousness as illusion, as only an illusion. That is the idea behind here. Now, the 32nd verse is actually the conclusion of all Vedantic philosophy and experience. One of the most celebrated verse in the entire Vedantic literature. The 32nd verse. Philosophically, it is one of the subtlest idea. You know what it says? Na nirodho na chotpattihi na bandho na cha sadhakaha na mumukshur na vai muktaha ityesha paramarthada. See, if you read the translation, you will be shocked and surprised, and you will be embarrassed sometimes. So it needs a lot of explanation. There is neither destruction nor birth. There is no jiva who is bound or seeking for release. None who is liberated, or anybody seeking liberation. This is the ultimate truth. You know what it means literally? It means there is no bondage, no liberation, no spiritual seeker, and no spiritual destiny. See, logically it is correct. See, liberation, spiritual liberation, or the ultimate spiritual wisdom, a spiritual experience, is not something that comes into existence. It is our inherent nature. Spiritual freedom, spiritual experience is our true nature. Everything else is alien, foreign to us. If you think you are this body, then that understanding is actually a violation. It is foreign. It is unnatural. What is the natural truth? The natural truth is we are the ever free. So bondage itself is something non-existent. If bondage is real in the true sense of the term, that bondage will never cease to be. If bondage is a reality, that bondage will never come to an end, which means there will be no liberation. That's the point. If your spiritual liberation is a state of experience that you get as a result of your effort, then that state of experience cannot be permanent. Because anything which is produced by effort cannot be eternal. And because it is an effect. And anything which is an effect of a cause cannot be eternal. Cause also cannot be eternal because cause becomes effect. So cause is not eternal. Effect also is not eternal because the effect comes from the cause. Which means before the effect came into existence, it did not exist. So it comes into existence. Which means there was a time when it did not exist. So it cannot be absolutely real. Absolutely real should always exist. The absolute reality cannot come into existence. Why? Because it always exists. If it always exists, how can it come into existence? If it comes into existence, it cannot be absolutely real. And then another point, it will cease to exist. Anything which comes into existence will disappear one day. Something which comes into existence in the past will disappear in the future. And the intermediary period is called existence. So, Gaudapada makes a very important statement. In other words, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It doesn't come from outside. Put in the biblical language, higher transcendental sense. What does it mean? Spiritual liberation, spiritual enlightenment is our birthright. Rather, bondage is something of is only an imagination. It is superimposition. Bondage cannot be real. Then, because of ignorance, we think we are bound. But that is only a wrong notion. So Gaudapada says, na nirodhaka, means there is no destruction because there is no birth. If something doesn't come into existence, then it cannot exist. And if it doesn't exist, it cannot cease to exist. Why? Because it always exists. If something which always exists cannot come into existence, because coming into existence means from a state of non-existence, it enters a state of existence. If it always exists, how can it come into existence? So spiritual freedom, spiritual enlightenment is our inherent, our built-in, our natural state of affairs. It is always there. Bondage is an illusion. That is what the author means. And then the world has no beginning. Why? Because the world as a reality doesn't exist. It is only a relative existence. And if there is no bondage, then there can be no liberation because we are already liberated. He said that is one fundamental point in Vedanta. We have to remember. In Vedanta, liberation is not the result of a series of human efforts. Ultimately, efforts, reading scriptures, contemplation, prayer, meditation, all these are necessary for what? For removing the wrong notion that we are bound. That's a wrong notion. See, why do you bring light to the room? To remove darkness. If you don't remove darkness, you may think, well, it is a piece of snake. It's a snake. When darkness is removed, you will understand it is a piece of rope. So the whole idea is this: liberation or spiritual freedom is our birthright. It is our natural characteristic. So spiritual liberation is our homecoming. It is when you come back to your own home, you don't seek anybody's permission. It is your natural place. So spiritual liberation, spiritual freedom is our natural home. So spiritual enlightenment is a kind of homecoming. Why? Because if it is a result of human efforts, then it cannot be a permanent state of permanent condition, cannot be a permanent state of affairs. Anything which is produced by effort will vanish. But this is not produced by effort. That's why it is not. It is within us. Spiritual freedom is within us, within all of us. This liberation doesn't come from outside, it is within all of us. Therefore, there is neither bondage, and if there is no bondage, then there is no liberation. If you are not bound, so how can you be liberated from bondage? You are already liberated. So you cannot be liberated. Why? Because you are already liberated. You are already Brahman, you are already Atman, you are already Supreme Consciousness. We are not aware of this. And the purpose of scriptures, spiritual practices, is to remove the wrong notion that we are bound, that we are not liberated, that we need liberation. All these are wrong notions. To remove these wrong notions, we need scriptural study, we need meditation, we need all spiritual effort. These are necessary. They are very important. Spiritual sadhana, spiritual efforts are necessary. But their only purpose is to remove ignorance, to remove darkness. And once darkness is removed, the reality expresses itself. That's the idea behind. So, na mumukshu, no seeker. Why? Because if you say you are seeking liberation, it means right now you are not liberated. Right now you are body and later you become Brahman. It is absolutely wrong. Even now, when you think you are this body, you are not this body. Even when you are under the wrong notion that you are this body or you are this mind, you are not this body, you are not this mind, you are Atman, you are Supreme Consciousness. Therefore, na mumukshuhu. Mumukshu means seeker, somebody who seeks liberation. In reality, the state of seeking liberation cannot be an absolute condition. Because if you accept that it is an absolute condition, then you have to accept that you are now not liberated, you are seeking liberation, and one day you will become liberated. Which means liberation is a state that comes to you, or that you reach, that you gain, which will make the state of liberation impermanent. But even when you are seeking liberation, you are only trying to remove the wrong notion that you are not liberated. In fact, you are liberated. You are ever free. Spiritual freedom is our natural state, inherent, inbuilt, natural state. Itesha Paramarthada. This is the highest spiritual truth. So we'll conclude here now. We'll continue this discussion later. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Namastu.